Just last August, there was an update to Lightroom Classic, and one of the things that was improved was the remove tool. But how does it compare to removing something in Photoshop? We're going to do a head-to-head comparison coming up. Hi, I'm Terry Vanderheiden, professional photographer, and today we're going to work on an image inside of Lightroom Classic using the newly improved remove tool. In Lightroom Classic's newest release, 14.5.1, the remove tool has received some improvements. But how does it compare to the old-fashioned way? You know, if you consider Photoshop being old-fashioned, of removing something inside of Photoshop. Do you really need to go into Photoshop for a tricky remove? Maybe we can do it in Lightroom? Let's see. Now, if you're a member of my mailing list, I sent you a link a few days ago to enable you to download the exact image we're going to work on here in today's tutorial. That way you could work alongside me during the video. If you're not on the mailing list and would like to be there, here's how you do it. Go to my website, imagelight.com, and pull down to subscribe and fill out the form and sign up there for free. If I'm doing a software tutorial, then I'll send out the image in advance of the video release date. If you'd still like to follow along, I'll leave a link in the description so you can go download that working image now or after this video. So let's open up Lightroom Classic and Photoshop and see the best solution for removing something inside these programs. All right, so we're inside of Lightroom Classic. Here's the image that I had sent out. We're going to go ahead and do just a little bit of work on it first. So let's go into Develop, and we're going to go into the Basic panel. And we'll make sure that we can see the whole image here by fit. And we're going to probably bring the exposure up a little bit to lighten up some of the darker areas. We're going to also, when we do that, we always end up maybe over lightening some of the areas that are white. So let's go ahead and bring our highlights down to get some more texture in the side of El Capitan right there. This is shot in Yosemite Valley. So we bring up the exposure a little bit, bring down the highlights. We can also bring up the shadows a little bit. And so that's a pretty common first jab at doing any of our work that we're going to do on this. We can also do a little bit of saturation improvement overall. And maybe if I was going to be doing complete work on this, we'd probably go in and we'd make sure that those greens are a little bit darker on these trees. Bring up the reds in here, but that's not important for this tutorial because we're going to talk about how to remove something. So the part that I want to remove is this limb that's coming up here and blocking the mountains. We're just going to remove that entirely. Before we do that, let's make some virtual copies, and we know how to do that by just right-clicking, going down to virtual copy. We'll make one, and then we'll make two. So let's go into this one here. This is our first virtual copy. So anything that we do to this, we can double check against the original. So let's go ahead and zoom this up. We're going to go to 66%. Now let's go ahead and do our remove. So we'll go into Develop module, click the Remove button. Make sure that we're on the Remove tool because you have the Band-Aid here, which is the healing brush, and then we got the regular stamp tool. So we want the Remove tool we're going to try to work with first. So here we go. We're going to draw the outline around it. We want to capture all of it. We don't want to go too crazy, but we do want to go outside the area of what we want to have removed so that Lightroom Classic has some ways that it can work with that structure. There we go. Make sure we're enclosed everything. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is just let off the mouse and unclick, and that's going to give us our mask of what's going to actually be removed. Now we do have the ability, if we want to come in here and add a little bit, we can add more things to what's going to be removed. The size of that brush is controlled by this here, or it can be controlled by the bracket keys like on any other type of way. We can also go and subtract if we want to subtract something, if we've made too much of a mask and we want to subtract a little bit. You know, you want it tight, but you don't want it too tight. You want to give it a little bit of surround, but like this area here, that's probably a little bit much, so we can just kind of click on that. There we go. So this is the area that we're going to remove, and the next thing we do is we're going to tell Lightroom Classic, go ahead and remove it. So we'll click on this. Now this is an AI-generated tool, so you need to be hooked up to the internet in order to do this because it's going to go up to the cloud and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And here's how it removed it. Let's take a look. Now, on first glance, it looks pretty decent. Let's go up to 100%. And we'll hold down the space bar, which gives us our little move hand, and we can move this around. It actually did a pretty good job. Look at this. It went in and replaced that tree. So let's go back to our original. And we're going to take this one. Let's go to this one and our first one here that we've done any work on it. And we'll do a little compare. And we can see, because when you're comparing, it compares identical on the same spot, right? So we can kind of see what we've done here. That looks pretty good. It came in here and rebuilt this mountaintop and it kind of put in a tree here that wasn't there originally, put in a little broken tree, kind of made up a few things. This is a little dull in here, but not bad. Actually did a pretty good job. And let's see how it did against the actual log itself. It did pretty good. It added in another stick or two here. If we get in a little tighter and start looking at it a little closer, this is 200%. Not bad. It kind of appears that the area that it built in is a little lower resolution. Do you see that there? The difference between this tree and this tree. But right over here where it was removed, this little stump of a tree, it's kind of a little bit jaggy. But we're on 200%, so maybe that's not going to be an issue depending again of how you're going to actually use it. So let's go in here and let's go to our... Now that we've done the remove, it actually worked pretty good. It worked pretty fast inside of Lightroom Classic. The improvements on that are pretty great. But let's go into Photoshop and see if we can do a little bit better. So we're just going to right click on the image, edit in, Adobe Photoshop 2025. All right, so the first thing we always do when we're inside of Photoshop is we're going to make a new layer, right? And the easy way to do that is Command J, and that'll make a duplicate layer. So whatever we do on here, we can compare to our first layer. So let's go ahead and pull this, get a nice zoomed in area of this limb. And we're going to use the remove tool that they put in here inside of Photoshop. So this is this little Band-Aid tool. When you pull this down, you've got spot healing and different ones here. Remove tool, the one with the two little stars next to it, is the one we're looking at. So let's go ahead and grab the remove tool. And let's go ahead and just paint around. And I've got this set up, and I would encourage you to set up the same way. I've got this set up so that you do as many moves as you want. So we're going to sample all layers, of course. That's always on. And we're going to use generative AI is off. So let's go ahead and turn that on. So we're comparing apples to apples. We'll leave that as may use it if it needs to. And over here, we're going to keep this, we're going to have this set up so that as soon as this thing is all masked the way we want it, then what we do is we hit the checkbox and it'll start doing the remove of it. So let's go ahead and bring that in, and now we'll hit remove. And again, we'll let Photoshop do its thing. Go in there and see what it did. So let's zoom up. And here again, kind of similar that happened in Lightroom, is we have a little slightly lower resolution back here, which is all the part that it was building, right? So when we look at this, some of the parts so over here you can see the resolution and the grass is here, but over here it gets a little soft because that's the area where this limb was, right? When we take the limb out, you can see that it's just a little softer in terms of resolution. That's because that's AI and it's generating in a lower resolution. But I think it did a pretty good job. But let's do this again. Let's try a different way of removing inside of Photoshop. And what we'll do is we'll just make a new layer here again. Command J. And we're going to title this one Remove. Tool. And then this one, what we're going to do is this one's going to be done a slightly different way. So let's go ahead and zoom back. You can just click on the zoom tool down here, hold the option key down and click, and that'll zoom you back out. Hit the space bar, get that little hand, and you can move it around so we can see what we're doing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to ask Photoshop, and one of the things that's really improved in Photoshop is the selection, the auto selection. So check this out. Let's go in here. We're going to click on one of these auto selection tools, and we're going to ask it to select subject. Now I have mine defaulted to the cloud, as you should, because it's more detailed, and we always want more detail on our selections. So let's tell it to select subject. Let's see what it does. All right, so it selected the whole log. So let's zoom out just a little bit. And we see what it did here. It selected the whole log. So we don't want the whole log selected. We just want that one limb, right? So the way we do this is we grab our lasso tool and we hold the option key down. That makes it a negative lasso. And then we're just going to drag around everything else. And we'll come through here. And we're basically moving all of this. Move this out of the way here. Moving all the selection except for that limb. So let's go in and take a look at our selection and see what we did here. So whenever you do a selection like this that you like, we can see it did a pretty good job. Look how tight it is. It's almost perfect up here at the top. It's a little bit off and a little bit off there. And it did an okay job here. Let's take our lasso tool and just kind of carve this out just a little bit. Same deal, holding the option key down. There, so this is our selection. Could probably select that. That's where we just hold the shift key down. Grab that little nub, and that adds to the selection. Let's go ahead and put this up here. It's kind of in the way. All right, so now we've selected this log. So one of the things that you can do with a selection that's pretty handy if you're doing this kind of thing, multiple things. Let's go up to select, and we're going to save selection. And we're just going to call this limb. So now we've saved that selection. If we ever want to come back to it, we can. So let's go ahead and pull back. And now what we're going to do is use a different technique. The last time we used was the remove tool, which was over here, but we're going to go up to edit and go to content aware fill. So we're going to ask Photoshop to take the pixels that are around our selection and fill it. So let's go ahead and do that. Content aware fill. Now with content aware fill, it comes up with a new dialog box, and you can see it right here. And what's interesting is all of this green area is an area that is saying, this is the area that we're going to choose from when we're trying to fill this. So what I like to do is I like to take this brush. It comes up here. You have these different choices, but I'll just use the brush. Nice big wide brush. And I'm just going to start painting to remove this green area, because anything that's a green area is an area that it's going to choose to copy from. It's going to copy pixels from that. And as we see, we don't want it to copy pixels from the log, certainly not the other limbs. We don't need any of this out here. So we just paint over it and we remove the green. Anytime when you're removing the green, it tells Photoshop, okay, we're not going to draw from those pixels to start removing this. So let's take El Capitan out completely. So it can draw a little bit from the sky, although we don't need much of it, so we could probably get rid of this here pretty safely. We want it to draw from the edges right next to the limb. And now we're going to just we'll come into here. And we'll hit OK. So now let's take a look at what we did. It put it up on a new layer, which is obviously really nice. And now we're going to get rid of this. We're going to hide this selection. We do Command H, and that hides that selection so we can see what we've done. So let's go into our zoom tool again and see what Photoshop did. Now, a couple things that it did here that's real obvious is obviously we had such a tight selection here that it chose to leave that outside area, right? But if you look inside of it, the detail is actually a little bit better. It's not lower resolution because it took the same resolution from over here. So let's do that again. Let's take that. We'll take that out of play. Come back into this. And remember, we save that selection. Let's go ahead and bring it back so we just don't have to do it again. We'll load selection. And then we just have to look for the selection that we're looking for. We called it limb. We'll say okay, and so now we're back with this selection. Now what I like to do on this is I like to modify this selection. So we're going to go up and select, and we're going to go to modify, and we're going to expand this selection. So let's expand it by, we'll just say 5 pixels. You'll see what it does. It's going to grow the selection so that it's going to cover a little bit more area. Not a lot, but a little more area. So let's go ahead and hit okay. You can kind of see here that indeed it's now got a border around this area, so it's going to have more to select from. See that? All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we just did, is we're going to tell it to do our content aware fill. It's in the edit menu. We pull it down and we come to content aware fill. Let's bring us into that new dialog box, and let's go ahead and zoom out. And we'll go back up to our brush, and what we're going to do is take away the green areas. We'll take away any of the areas that we don't want Photoshop to use when it's trying to decide where it's going to draw these pixels from to rebuild that area that we're asking it to remove. Let's go ahead and take this all out. Don't need any of this log. Just like before, we'll take this out. Take out El Capitan. We can leave some sky, but we don't need that much sky. We can take that out. Let's go ahead and get rid of this log here. So any of the areas in green are what it's going to use to look for pixels to build this remove. So let's get that out of there. And now we just hit OK down in the bottom of the content aware fill dialog box. And now let's take a look at what we got. We'll hide this selection again, Command H, and let's zoom in and see what we got. Look at that. So it did a really, really good job. Let's go ahead and see what without and in. We can see right here there's kind of a line that's a little softer, so it's not a perfect thing. So, but if we're blowing this thing up big, we want to fix that. So we have to do a couple of different things when we're doing our removes, right? So one of the ways to do this is we like this way better than our first one, right? We can't have that line around it. So let's just get rid of that. We'll throw that in the trash. And now what we're going to do is we're going to compare this to using the remove tool that we did. So this was the remove tool where it actually put in this whole mountaintop at a lower resolution. That's the part that I don't really go for. This is a higher resolution. There's a little bit of change here that we want to fix. And the way we do that is we're going to just go ahead and use the classic clone stamp tool to do any of our fixing. So let's go ahead and make a combo layer. So all the layers below here, we're going to go ahead and use Shift, Option, Command, and the letter E. And that gives us a whole new layer that has everything combined in it. And that allows us to do our cloning. So we click on the clone tool, and we're going to be cloning at, we'll leave this on normal. And we could do 100%, but I like to probably do a little bit less. So maybe let's go to 35%. That way it's not going to be quite as visual that what we're doing. So again, you find the target area you'd like to choose from. And I have a video on how to use the clone tool. If you don't know how to use the clone tool, check out the video. I'll leave a link in the description as well as up here. But we just hold the Option key down to choose the target the area that we want to work with, and then come over here. And just start kind of blurring that line, right? We're making that there is no straight lines, right? So we're just selecting from over here where those crosshairs are. And we come over here and we just click and drag. And what we're doing is just painting any of the areas that we think are a little suspect. And again, we're only doing this at 35%. So if we, with such a small amount, you can't tell that there has actually been something going on. If we did this at 100%, slide this opacity all the way over to 100%, then it's a little more critical. So if you select it over here, you'd see it would put in something a little more stranger. So we can undo that And I like to work on a lower percentage, maybe 20, 30%, because that allows us to do a little bit better cloning. Because if we do multiple cloning, we'll click here and drag up. This is something that we can do, over and over, just keep painting over it until we get it to the level that we want. So let's take a look at what we've done. Yes, see, we fixed a lot of those straight lines that were there, and that looks a little more realistic as compared to the remove tool, which put in and did things at a lower resolution. So if you're going to be using it ultimately small in a small area like social media or something like that, then you don't really worry about it. You can use a remove tool and just cook right through it. That's not a big deal. But if you're really serious about it and you want this to look good, and especially if you're going to put it up on a wall, right? So here's another area down here we can see that we need to actually do a little bit more of clone stamping. So come over here. So you have to kind of use a combination of tools, right? And I think that the content aware is a fantastic way to start. And again, the best way to do this is make a selection of whatever it is that you want to work with. Make the selection a little bit bigger so that it has some area to work with, and then do content aware remove. Take that, or fill it, content aware fill, and then fill that all in with the pixels that are around it. And you can tell it by using the green area you can tell it what pixels to use to build that fill, right? So then you're filling it with real pixels. These aren't made up pixels that are low resolution from the internet. So pretty cool way to go. If you're enjoying this kind of content, hit the like button. It really tells YouTube other people that might be interested in this type of video. It kind of shows them that people like this kind of video. Also, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified of my next videos. If you click that little bell icon, you'll be notified of my next video when it's released. You can always email me, terry@imagelight.com, if you have questions. But a really good way to do it is leave a comment in the comment section. I always read the comments and I'll get back to you that way as well. So let's just go up to File, Save, and we'll save this back into Lightroom Classic. So here's our original. This is our PSD. We can see this is our Photoshop file. So we'll just make a new color on that. We'll set that color at blue. And this is our original. So we'll set that one at red. And then this is our change inside of Lightroom, and we'll set that one to yellow. So these are our images that we worked on. We have an extra virtual copy that we don't need, so we're going to hit delete, just get rid of that. So these are the images that we worked on. All right, so this is our Photoshop one, this is our original, and this is our Lightroom one. So let's compare the Lightroom one to the Photoshop one. So we can click on one and then hold the Command key down, click on the other, and then we can either hit this icon or hit the letter C, and we'll be in the compare mode. So let's go ahead and zoom up. And this is what's nice about the compare mode is you can compare, let's go to 100%. You can compare right next to one another as to what actually is being compared, right? It doesn't move the image away. Oops, there we go. So this is where we started right here, right? This was where that limb was. And this is the Photoshop one on the right side. And we can kind of see what we've done here if we compare. Let's go up to 200%. And you can see when we use the content aware fill in Photoshop, it actually uses good pixels, real pixels. But over here in the Lightroom version, it's going to generate pixels from, it's making it from AI, right? So the pixels are not as high a resolution as your original camera. So for small things, obviously, if you're looking at it like this or something small, not a big deal. And it's obviously way faster, right? So Lightroom remove does have a use, but if you're going to do a remove that's going to be big and it's going to be on a wall or a print or something, you really need to take the time and go in and do those steps. We make a selection, we go into content aware fill, we fill it, and then we cannot forget to go back in, use the clone tool, and go in and smooth out any of the areas that aren't perfect, because you got to make it look perfect so that when it's on the wall and people can look at it, it's going to look great. You don't want any kind of look that makes you feel like that maybe you have done some hokey remove on something that people can point out and see. So again, for more day-to-day work, The new remove tool inside of Lightroom Classic works pretty good, but for something that's important, something you want it to make sure it looks great, you're going to probably have to go into Photoshop, and rather than use that remove tool in there, I would suggest you remove with the content aware fill and use the clone tool to get it looking perfect. All right, see you next time.